Welcome to the Nonmember project, and today we're talking to Adobe. Adobe, how are you?
I'm good. You?
I'm doing great. Adobe and I are friends because we have the same religion. We're both
Mhm.
Protestant Christians,
Mhm.
and she is on the track team. So
Yes.
you were recruited to come here, right?
Mhm.
Through BYU,
Yes.
and you chose to come, and now you're in your third year, is that right?
Yeah.
And hopefully going to graduate in April.
Mhm.
Awesome. So what are you getting your degree in?
Exercise and wellness.
Cool. So are you hoping to go to med school or anything after?
Um, the plan is nursing school, so
Awesome.
hopefully nursing school.
That's great. Nursing school is a great option.
Thanks.
So, when you were growing up, did you ever think you were going to end up at a Latter-day Saint school for college?
No, I think in high school I found out what LDS was, but
Mhm.
it was through this show called Escaping LDS, so that was like a really bad look. So I
Yeah.
didn't really know what Mormons were,
Mhm.
or I didn't have that much
Yeah.
background knowledge on them. So I never thought I would be at a school like this.
So, the show that you watched, was it about like a fundamentalist Latter-day Saint?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
thought
Okay.
all Latter-day Saints were like that.
Yeah.
So when I
Uh-huh.
came here, I was a bit scared.
And that is like it's a pretty common misconception for people
Mhm.
to think that everyone who's LDS is polygamous, and all of our LDS friends know that because they get asked about it all
Yeah.
the time. I had a lot of LDS friends growing up, so I kind of knew that it wasn't
Mhm.
like that. But
Mhm.
what area are you from?
Maryland.
Okay.
So yeah, there's not a lot on the East Coast.
Not a lot of LDS people there. And you
Mhm.
didn't know any growing up or anything.
There was one girl that apparently turned out to be LDS because she decided she was going to BYU.
Oh,
And
cool.
I was like, "You're going to BYU?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm LDS." And I've been going to school with her since elementary school.
Wow.
And I
And you
never
didn't
knew.
know.
And she was the only one.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had like three in my high school. I'm from Kansas.
Oh.
3 or so, yeah. And one of the guys that I came here with was my ministering brother my freshman year because we were in the same ward accidentally. So
Mm.
it was really fun. Um, okay, so when you were applying to colleges, you're all the way from Maryland, so that's pretty far from even knowing what BYU
Yeah.
is, right? Like, had you even
Mhm.
heard of BYU?
No.
You just know it's D1
Yeah,
and
so basically, the coach that was recruiting me, she called.
hmm.
She had a mutual friend with my coach in high school,
Cool.
and that's how they got in touch. And she learned about me,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, there's a school called BYU that's recruiting you." And I was like, "I don't know what that is." I looked it up. I saw Utah. I was like, "What? Absolutely not!" And and I just brushed it off. And then she was persistent, and so I really looked into it and filled out the athletic questionnaire, like
Hmm.
the recruiting questionnaire, and it said, "Are you LDS?" And I was like, "No way." And I looked up all the acronyms for
Yeah.
LDS, and all that was coming up was Latter Day Saint. I was like, "No way, no way, no way," and that was it. And I was like, "No, I'm not." And I didn't know it was a LDS school.
Crazy.
Hmm.
So you didn't know until you were applying.
Yeah.
Wow. So were you interested already? Like did you talk to the coach before you knew it was
Um,
a LDS school?
I spoke to her, but she didn't mention that. Maybe
Mm.
she just assumed that I kind of knew, but I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, I think it's like a
Hmm.
general knowledge thing in the West.
Yeah.
But if you've never interacted with BYU, which is pretty common, I would assume on the East Coast,
Mhm.
then yeah, I don't know why you would have to know that.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Yeah.
interesting. And what do you run?
I run the sprints and the hurdles, primarily the hurdles. So, 60 hurdles, 60 dash, 200, 100 hurdles, 100 dash, and then like the 4x1. Yeah.
Cool. And you started in high school, middle school. Like, how did you get into running as a sport?
I started in the ninth grade because people always told me I was fast,
Hmm.
and I would always race the boys at cookouts. But I, I
That's
was like,
awesome.
let me see how my speed compares to people who've actually been doing this for years. So ninth grade, um, I was finally able to do an extracurricular activity, and my mom, she didn't have the time or the money for them before, so high school I was able to do it. And I measured up and I made varsity, and it's
Never
history
looked
from
back.
there. Yeah, never looked back.
Not really, really fast.
Mm.
Running in the NCAA.
Yes, thank God.
So one of the cool things that Adobe brings to this campus is she is a devout Christian, and so we have a lot of people on campus that participate in their faith traditions, but some to greater degrees than others. Some it's more traditional, and some it's more like spiritual based and more part of your everyday life. And that's something that you've really involved yourself with it while you're here. Like you go to church, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you participate in your faith on like a daily basis.
Yes.
So how do you feel like you've been able to connect with your faith? How did you connect with your faith in Maryland when you were growing up?
Well, growing up, it was in my face. So I think it was a little more forced growing up. And my family is your traditional Christian Nigerian family. Like, you make sure to go to church every blessed Sunday. You don't miss service. You, um, you like gospel music is such a big part of our lives, and I'd wake up on Saturday mornings to gospel music, and it was just everywhere. Like, if anything was going on, the first action was prayer. Like, if I told my mom I was going through something or I needed help on something, or my grandma, it was always prayer. And then I think 2020, my senior year of high school, yeah, my senior year, I was really just like more connected to God. I think because all the distractions were taken away because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also the recruiting period, and I was graduating high school, and it was just a lot going on at that time. So I think I just needed a lot of guidance, and I turned to God, and that's part of why I got so close to Him during that time.
That's really awesome. So when you came to BYU, well, actually, we haven't even discussed why you decided to come here. And that's a question I'm probably going to say this in every episode, but the question we always get asked is, why are you here?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot.
All the time, even in athletics. Do you get asked?
Even in athletics. So basically, I looked up the demographics and I said, no way, I'm going there. Like, it's the least percentage of black people that I've seen at any university. And I was like, why would I go there? And but the coach that was recruiting me, she was a black woman and she was an LDS. And so I guess it just made it easier to resonate with her just off of just surface level. And she just explained, like, it's really not as bad as you think. And I prayed and prayed and prayed and fasted, begging God to show me where to go, because I really did not know. Like, BYU was the best option just on paper, I guess. But the other schools, I think I just wanted an easier transition into college. And that was the biggest battle for me. And then one day, my sprinting coach from high school, he called me and basically said, I think BYU is the school for you. And obviously, he's not telling me go there, but he's like, knowing you and knowing what you want to accomplish, and also knowing this coach, I think that's the best place for you. Because if you go to the other places, you might not improve or get where you want to get.
Yeah.
And he was right.
He was right.
Yeah.
You ended up here.
Yeah.
So do you think that having a coach that kind of had more of a similar background to you was helpful in your sense of belonging coming to BYU?
Yeah, definitely. It just made it easier because obviously we didn't know each other deeply, but I think just off of surface level and just the fact that we have similar traits and just things that you just see from the jump, it just made it easier to just adjust initially, to initially adjust, because a lot of the LDS people, and obviously I've never been around this many white people in my life. So
it's a like culture shock on so many levels.
on so many levels. And so I just was like, I think it was nice to have her there, and then also like my other black female athletes, teammates, because even though I don't know them that much, it's nice to see someone who looks like you or at least has a similar belief. And when you see this like flood of like people who don't look like you, it's hard to even know where to start.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note like that's an experience that can happen anywhere you go where you look like very different from everyone else. Like I think sometimes, you know, people will come at it and be like, well, why do you say stuff like that? Like it doesn't matter. Like you shouldn't worry about people's skin color. We're Christians. We don't think that you should judge someone based on their skin color, but the reality is when you go into a place and you look different from 99% of the population, people look at you more often. Like people have more questions, and there is, I'm sure you can attest, some racism that does happen here and in any population with this big of a majority. And so I think it is important to acknowledge the difficulty that is, and sometimes the camaraderie that you're going to have with people, just because by looking at them you can say, okay, we do have some similar experiences here.
It's nice to know that, you know, the belief system is at least, you know, morally the same or similar, which made it easier because I don't see outright racism here. I think it's just more ignorance and people just not being around enough people like me in their life to know certain things or to know not to say certain things. So there's been quite a bit of that, but I just take it day by day, person by person, because at first I was very, very like shut off from people who weren't my teammates. I was just, even my teammates, some of them, like I initially, like freshman year, I was just very like scared to interact because I was just scared that the wrong thing was gonna come out of their mouth.
And that is kind of scary. Even like I don't have the exact same experience as you, but even just as a non-LDS person, sometimes you're like, I just don't want to engage. It's too much energy.
Too much energy.
Too much energy. But I think ultimately I feel like I found more of a sense of belonging when I've chosen to interact with the community and become more a part of it, even though it is really difficult sometimes, and we do want to talk about those things to help and improve them. But there's a lot of good that comes from deciding to interact even when you are part of the minority. So what are some things that you would say are like insensitive things people have said to you that they may not realize are insensitive, just so people kind of get an idea of like what maybe they don't realize not to say?
There's been quite a bit, but I tend to suppress them just because like I can't hate you for saying something like that, but at the same time, like, I don't want to interact with you right now because you said something like that. Like, I think some comments, I think culturally, like, with hair, and, like,
for sure.
I've gotten comments like, oh, how do you carry that on your head, like braids? Like, how do you carry that on your head? Like, doesn't that, like, weigh your head down? Like, you must have a really strong head. And I was like, I just didn't even know what to do in that moment. Like, I was just so stunned by that comment. And
what a weird thing to say.
Yeah. And also, like, I guess, just when I talk about my culture sometimes, like, people just have so many questions or they're just so flabbergasted by the difference. And I guess like that surprise is okay, but sometimes it does make you want to not talk about your background as much because then it's just so different from everyone else around you.
Especially in Utah for sure. It's a different culture here. And you're Nigerian. So why don't you tell us like a few things that you really love about your culture being Nigerian?
Nigerians tend to be very out there. Like it can be good, it can be irritating to other cultures, but that's one thing I'll say. Like, whether you're in Nigeria or you're outside of Nigeria, Nigerians tend to be very just like open and eccentric and just very vibrant. It's like it's a very vibrant group of people, big group of people, but they're just very, very colorful in like everything you do. We're very funny. Our food is good. Yeah. hmm
And you grew up in the States, is that right?
Yeah, in Maryland.
But you go back to visit Nigeria regularly or just every once in a while?
Every few years, because the ticket,
so expensive.
yeah,
It's
like
ridiculous.
per person, like a bad day is like 2,000. A good day is like 1,200 maybe. So yeah, like and my mom, she gets tickets for our whole family, and it's like 6 of us in the household. So she's spending like around 10K.
Yeah.
Like for the whole trip,
It's
just
a lot of money.
for tickets.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
But you have like a whole extended family that you go to visit back in Nigeria.
Yeah. There's a lot of them.
Yeah. It looks really fun. I'm always jealous to see your posts. I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's so fun.
So what's one thing that you miss about being around your family in Maryland since you've come to Utah?
I think it's just the support. Like they just help keep they help keep me in line. Not that I'm not in line away from home, but they just help me remember like how strong I am, I guess. Because something could happen here and I'm going through something and I have to call my mom and she might be busy, or I have to call my grandparents, they might be busy. My grandma and my mom were very prayerful. So sometimes like I just like to hear them pray. And at home that's just like so standard, but when I'm here it's like I have to call them and they have to be home. Like it's just like more that goes into it. And then also food. Food is a big part. My grandma, she's an amazing cook. Like she actually was a restaurant owner in Nigeria.
Wow.
So she's been cooking for decades and she just makes the best food and it's so, so good. And being away from it is hard.
Yeah. And do you just go home like for Christmas and do you go home for summer?
Yeah, Christmas and summer.
Okay. That's nice. Sure, it's like a much needed break from
much needed
the cultural differences here. So one thing I was gonna ask you about is, as Christians, sometimes people kind of assume that like, oh well, you must feel like more comfortable here because Latter-day Saints also consider themselves Christians. And it's really like it can be kind of invalidating because we have very, very, very different traditions.
Yeah.
From LDS. Like there's definitely morals in common, which I think we both appreciate. Like that when we're here, we're not gonna be around people that disagree with us morally in a lot of senses. There's obviously things we do disagree on, but yeah. So how has it been for you with kind of trying to make your way as someone of the Christian faith? Well, you know, do you have people tell you a lot? Well, I'm Christian too. We're like the same thing.
Yeah, actually, that was part of the culture shock because I would come here, and before I even came here, I had so many people like, don't let them convert you, like, do not, like,
same, yeah.
like, stay strong. And I was like, it's not gonna happen. Then I come here, and I just have such a mindset that we're just, like, so different because before coming here, everyone's like, don't let them convert you. You're like, that's a completely different religion. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not LDS, I'm Christian. Because like I'll be in a LDS class and they'll be like, oh,
yeah,
what
like
are you?
Religion class.
Yeah, religion class. And they'll be like, what are you? And I'm like, I'm Christian. And they're like, oh, we're Christian too. And then it's just awkward because now it's like, they're like, are you LDS? I'm like, no. And they're like, well, then what are you? I'm like, I'm Christian. It's just...
And then they're like, the question you get after that is like, well, what denomination though?
Yeah.
And I think like some people are tied to their denomination pretty strongly in Christianity, but I just consider myself a Christian.
Same.
And yeah, we kind of have the same view on that. And so it's difficult because, like, for us, like, a lot of people are so confused because they don't really understand denominations very well. Because sometimes the only thing that people really know about denominations here in, like, Utah culture, I would say, is that they're all fighting, which is also not true. But it's just kind of a weird, like, oh, okay, like, I get asked that question, then I feel the need to, like, explain the theological history of denominations to people because I'm like, you don't understand where I'm coming from. But I am a Christian. I am just a Christian. I don't want to explain any more than that because that's what I believe. And people just want you to be more. They want you to say something else.
That's why I'm like, I would fall into that trap a lot because I would say I'm Christian and they'd be like, oh, well, we're Christian too. And I'd be like, oh, well, I'm Anglican. And although I grew up Anglican, I just identify as Christian. There's one Bible. I stick to the Bible. Whatever happens, happens. Like, I'm not so strong in exactly every single thing we should be doing in church. But I do go to church and I appreciate church and we need to go to church, but yeah, I'm not so strong in denominations.
Yeah, I would agree. And theologically, I think it's also important to say that, like, when Adobe and I both have very strong beliefs in our respective faiths, and they are somewhat, you know, in the same vein as the LDS Church, even though we don't believe it's the same religion, and the LDS Church doesn't claim it's the same religion either. But I think sometimes because of, you know, bad interactions that have happened between mainstream Christians and Latter-day Saints, people assume that if you say we disagree, that's like a bad thing. And that's not true at all. Like, I think it's really healthy for me to be able to say to my Latter-day Saint friends, we don't believe the same thing. And they're like, sometimes people get offended by that here, where you're like, no, we don't believe the same thing. And they're like, oh, no, like, it's okay, we all believe the same thing. And I'm like, guys, like, you know you believe I'm going to the terrestrial kingdom. Like, I'm not going to the celestial kingdom according to your religion. So we don't believe the same thing.
Yeah, we don't.
But yeah, it's like not a bad thing to disagree.
I think it shows how honest you are and that you are open to dialogue.
Yeah.
Rather than just brushing it off and going about your day.
Yeah. So what's one thing that you feel like, since you've moved to Utah and you're kind of separated from your family, who is a big part of your faith growing up, how do you feel like your faith has maybe grown in certain areas because you've been surrounded by people that disagree with you?
It's grown even more, thankfully, because I had to realize a lot of things on my own. And I had to realize I can't just have grandma and mom praying for me all the time and I'm not doing anything. I had to, like, mature in my faith and spiritually mature. And that's been really nice. Just being so far away from them, like, sometimes I feel so dependent on their guidance and their prayer, which is good. But I need to have my own relationship with God. So I've developed even more my own relationship with God coming to college.
That's really good.
Thanks.
And you're part of Cross Seekers now, so we do a Bible study weekly on Wednesdays to try and help Protestant students basically on campus to feel a little bit more welcome and at home, because we don't have a lot of spaces where we can just study our scriptures. And obviously the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints also uses the Bible, but sometimes a different version and sometimes different interpretations. And sometimes you'll go to, like, if you're doing some sort of something relating to the Bible, like, it's still, you know, prophets get brought up and the Book of Mormon gets brought up. And so sometimes it's nice to just be able to sit with a group of people that are just like, no, I just believe the Bible and we're just going to talk about it and study it and look at, like, the linguistics and stuff. So you grew up studying the Bible, right?
Yeah. I didn't study it a lot by myself. It was more my grandma and my mom's guidance. My mom would make me and my brothers memorize Bible stories word for word.
Wow.
Like, she would read it and then we'd have to memorize it, and if you didn't memorize it, you'd have to stay up and memorize it. And
Like before
word
bed?
for word before bed.
Wow.
Word for word. And then also my grandma, whenever we didn't go to church because of something, whether it was like an issue with, I don't know, car or weather, something, or church wasn't, something just happened, I don't know. Especially when COVID happened, we would do Bible studies at home, and also on Saturday mornings when we were off of school, obviously. We would do Bible studies at home, and it would be my grandma, my grandpa, and me, my brothers and I.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the weird culture shocks for me here has been the differences in how we study scriptural things. Is that something you've noticed in some of your LDS classes with studying scripture, or have you noticed any differences for you?
I haven't noticed too many differences, except for the fact that they just have to study more scripture. Like, there's just more that they look into, like the Doctrine and Covenants, the Pearl of Great Price, and the Book of Mormon. Oh, I remember a lot from LDS classes. But yeah, those, at first I was like, that's a lot of work. But then I just gave it grace, and I was like, that's their belief. I can't judge it.
Yeah, true. I have a lot of respect for my LDS friends, and I still disagree. I always will, and they'll always disagree with me on religion. But I honestly just like that we can have a relationship with people that completely disagree on certain points of theology and be like, well, I still love these people. We're still friends, and it's actually fun to talk about the deeper points of doctrine and like, oh, why do you think this or that, and just explore each other's different beliefs. So it's been kind of fun just to have those discussions. Yeah, which is we're in a rare place to be able to have them here at BYU.
Very rare.
So, how has your career in running kind of coincided with your journey of faith here at BYU?
The track is a place where I get to just forget about the fact that I'm at a LDS community and university, and that the school is less than 1% Black. Track has really helped me with just escaping from the rest of the university, but at the same time, being an athlete has prompted me to just seek God more. And not saying that not being an athlete is just going to make me stagnant, but I feel like there are just certain mental challenges you go through, especially with track being such a mental sport. Like, there are a lot of mental challenges you go through that if you don't have some type of support, some type of greater power to lean on, then it's really, really easy to break. Yeah. And so being a college athlete, especially D1, it's just made me to have to seek God more and recognize that I must seek God more, because if I don't, then I'm really fragile. Yeah, I think athletics tends to be a place where there's a lot of spiritual leanings, and a lot of athletes do have things that they deal with on a spiritual level when they're playing their sport or running or whatever they do. And it is interesting to me here that BYU does recruit a lot of non-LDS athletes, but there's not a lot of support for you guys spiritually. Like, it's kind of limited to kind of LDS perspectives in a lot of ways. So how do you think like maybe that could improve with athletics? Like, do you think it would help non-LDS students to have more of like a support system within athletics that's non-LDS? I think it definitely would, just so that people will feel more comfortable and like they can talk to more people. But it's such a mental battle, because I feel like when you say things like that, they're like, oh, well, you chose to come here. You knew what you're walking into. So how can you want to come and change something? And it's been such like a mental battle that I've had with
Mhm.
myself since freshman year. It's like I might want more, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm being too much. And I mean, but it would definitely be very helpful for non-LDS students, especially non-Christians.
True.
Like,
Very true. Yeah, because at least we can like kind of talk around things.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we're like, well, we all
Mhm.
believe in Jesus,
Yeah,
but not all of our
exactly.
students do. It's kind of difficult, and
Yeah.
I think we do go through that a lot. Where if we make any sort of suggestion about ways that things could potentially get better for non-members here, people do say, "Well, you chose to come here."
Mhm.
And we know we chose to come here. Like
Yeah.
that, we know we did. But particularly for athletes that were recruited, like sure they chose it, but sometimes you really only know your program. Like
Mhm.
even a lot of our LDS students really don't know what they're getting into when they come to BYU just
Yeah.
because the
Mhm.
culture is so different here than what most people would imagine, even if you're LDS.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fair to acknowledge that and say that it is different for people than they expected a lot of the time. And instead of shutting those people down and telling them, well, you chose this, so deal with it, it would be really nice if we were able to say, like, okay, well, what's one way we can help you? Because I think there's ways to help non-LDS students without compromising the integrity of this being an LDS university.
Yeah.
Like,
For
we don't want it to
sure.
not be an LDS
Yeah,
university.
like
I'm going to
I'm
say that
not
in every
trying to come
podcast.
to BYU and change BYU. Like,
No.
I don't want, because like there's a culture that they're proud of and they
Mhm.
want to stick to, and I don't want to be that person to come and be like, oh no, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But there are some things that would be nice to have for students that don't resonate here with
Yeah.
people. And yeah.
Right. What positive things have you seen going in that direction with BYU or athletics at BYU? Just kind of some general things on campus that you've seen.
I would say the belonging
Mm-hmm.
and all that they're doing. Belonging begins with you. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really good because it allows those students that aren't white or LDS to come together and get to know each other and really express how they feel. But at the same time, you can have white and LDS students
Mm-hmm.
there as well to learn and understand what
Yeah.
it's like for these other students. And so I think that's really positive. And I feel like every year it's getting better, at least since I've been here, every year it's been getting
Yeah,
better.
definitely. So, Adobe, what are some things that you want members of the LDS church that go to BYU to know about interacting with non-LDS students and other minority students?
I would say to just be open because you never know the background that someone is coming from. So just be open to hear whatever. And also, it's okay to be it's okay to express your beliefs as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't need to be such an awkward encounter. Like, we can both be real and honest with each other.
Yeah, that's so true. It does get kind of awkward sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, people are scared of sharing with us because we're not the same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But difference is good. And being friends with people that are different from you is really fantastic part of life.
Yeah, good.
So, yeah, if we can get more into that mode at BYU, that would be really awesome, I think, just to increase people's awareness of other perspectives, but also because it's important to have relationships with people that are different from you. And once you leave BYU, most of us are going to have to be doing that. So
Yeah.
I think it's an important skill to have. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about your experiences at BYU or the things, just anything about the non-member experience that you think is valuable to share?
I would say that it's been a growing experience.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I can't leave here saying, "Oh, I hated it. I didn't like it at all," because that would just be a lie. I'm thankful for everything I've learned and everything that I'm still learning, and that just makes me, I guess, a little more well-versed when I leave here. So,
yeah. So are you glad that you decided to come to BYU?
Yeah, I believe it was in God's plan.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you belong here?
Do I feel like I belong here? Kinda. it's like, it's not to discount my place, but
Yeah.
I guess I do belong because this is where God said for me to be for a certain amount of time. So, yeah, I do belong.
You belong. But do you feel like you belong?
That is a little more debatable. That's a little more debatable at times.
What do you think that this, just the people around you could do to help you feel more like you belong here?
That is a hard question. Like I said, just be more open. When you're speaking to someone from a different background than you, then just treat it like you're speaking to any other person you'd know. It does, like I said, it doesn't need to be an awkward encounter. Because I feel like I go through so many awkward encounters. And you don't have to talk so much about, like, your perspective. It should be an equal balance. I think that's one of the things.
Yeah. Would you say, and like other interviews, we've talked a lot about asking like genuine questions. Like usually we know if the question you're asking is genuine.
Yeah.
And so if you're asking a question, you really mean it, and it's a genuine question, then we're happy and excited to answer you. So you don't need to be scared of talking to us.
Yeah. No need for fear.
Yeah. We're not scary.
Come on now.
Come on. Well, Adobe, it was so great to have you today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.